This is day 3 of Face to Face 2026, our virtual conference. And we're very, very happy to have you here this morning to join us for this session, which is Beyond the Classroom, How Arts Educators Transform Schools and Communities. Thanks for being here. My name's Kinsey. I'm the Programs Director here at the New York City Arts and Education Roundtable. To give a visual description, I am a white woman with kind of chin length brown hair, split with a part down the middle, and I have some large round wireframe glasses on, and I'm wearing a dark gray charcoal ribbed t-shirt, and I'm in front of a blurred background. And I'm very glad to have you all here. Although we're currently meeting online via Zoom today, the Roundtable would like to acknowledge that we do work and live on unceded lands. Mannahatta, or the place that is widely known as New York City, exists on the contemporary and ancestral homelands of the Canarsie, Munsee, Lenape, and Wappinger people. These sovereign nations and communities are still thriving here, and we continue to occupy their lands. So we would like to take a moment to give a moment of respect to them, as well as to the Black, Brown, and immigrant communities, which have helped build the city that we know and love today. As we recognize that all of our pasts, presents, and futures are intertwined, we would like to uplift again a handful of contemporary Indigenous arts organizations that I can paste in the chat now. If you haven't before, just invite you to check out some of these organizations, get to know them, support them with donations if you can. And I invite you to add any other organizations that you would like to highlight with folks on the call in the chat as well. Thank you. So just a few Zoom reminders. Before that, I have to say thank you to our conference sponsors. Almost got ahead of myself. Our conference sponsors are so vital to the work that we do for Face to Face 2026. It is because of them that we're able to bring you such vibrant and robust programming. So very, very big thank you to all of them. But this session today specifically is brought to you by the 4 sponsors whose logos are on the screen right now. So just want to say a very big thank you to Lotus Music and Dance, Blick Art Materials, CMW Strategies, and New York City Children's Theater. Thank you all so much. Now I'll stop sharing and give just a few reminders. So if you are having trouble with Zoom at any time this morning, please just send me, Kinsey, a private message. I'm here to help. You can also message any other member of the Roundtable staff. Please do remember to keep your mic on mute. If you want to check that now, make sure that your mic is off unless you're the person speaking so that we can all hear each other clearly. We encourage you to use the chat to connect with others on the call and ask questions. We will have some time at the end for Q&A. So just pop those there and I'll be collecting them. This meeting does include live ASL interpretation. It also includes automated captioning via Zoom, which you are able to access via the captions button. It may be on your toolbar or under the more section of your toolbar, and those will start automatically populating for you if you click show captions. Please also note the Roundtable policy in our events is no AI chatbots or recording transcription devices. We are recording this session for you and we'll have it available at the end of the conference. But if you have an AI chatbot, it will be removed. If you have any access needs related to that or questions about it, please send me a message and let me know. I think that's finally it. So thank you for bearing with me for that opening. And it is my great pleasure to turn it over to our group who is presenting today. So join me, please, in welcoming Stephanie Nantel, Senior Director of ETM National and New York Outreach at Education Through Music. Hi, Stephanie.
Hi, good morning. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for coming. As Kinsey said, my name is Stephanie Nantel, and I am the Senior Director of ETM National and New York Outreach, and I'll be your moderator today. I work for Education Through Music. Education Through Music is a national nonprofit that partners with public schools to train, place, and support music teachers throughout their career. And it's this work that has informed how I think about creating impactful partnerships, specifically with the panelists that we have here present. And that's what brings us to today's panel, which is Beyond the Classroom, How Arts Educators Transform Schools and Communities. We're here to explore a big question. What strategies help arts educators develop partnerships, expand their influence beyond the classroom, and measure that lasting impact of their work? As educators, we already know the power of what happens inside our classrooms, and today is really about what happens beyond them. To guide our conversations, we'll be using what we're calling a teacher growth arc. So we think of this teacher growth arc as going from the classroom, building to our greater school community, building to our district, and building to the greater community at large. As you listen today, I want you to think about, where are you currently on that arc? We all start in one place and we move fluidly through our career to other places. And where is it that you want to grow next? We've put in the link, and we're going to continue to drop in a link for in the chat for people who come through, a personal action plan. We wanted you to be able to use this time not just to hear about great ideas and think about them, but to really put those thoughts and ideas and the resources that you're going to gain today into a personal action plan for yourself. So as we drop this into the chat, I'm going to drop it right here, and we'll continue to drop it as people go on. You are going to have to open it up and make a copy so that you're able to edit it. If you have any issues with that, you can let us know in the chat. And as you do that, you're going to be able to fill in ideas that resonate, potential stakeholders, collaborators that you come up with as you're listening and hearing what everyone is sharing. And hopefully by the end of the session, confirming 3 next action steps that you will take to move through this creation of the new partnership and expanding your impact. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our incredible panelists for today. We're going to start with one of our panelists. I'm going to introduce her. She's going to share a little bit about herself. We'll start with each panelist sharing a little bit before we get into the group dialogue. So the first panelist that I would love to introduce you to is Jessica. Jessica also goes by Jespar. Let us know how you would prefer we refer to you, is a veteran teacher in the New York City Department of Education, and she teaches at PS 72 in the Bronx. Jessica, welcome. Can you share with us just a little bit about your career?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. To start off, just to mention, I started off as a teaching artist, and then I was hired by the New York City Department of Ed. I've worked in everything from parochial schools to public schooling of teaching, and I've taught everything from choir to band, general music. We've done theater programs. So there's been a lot of diversity in the programs that have been, helped to create and that were supported in the schools that I worked at.
Thank you, Jessica. And I've been able to see the impact of Jessica's teaching firsthand, so I'm so excited to have her here to share today. So we're going to start with a question for you, Jess. Can you share an example of an experience that you facilitated for your students outside of music class? And then what was the impact you were able to observe from that experience with your students?
Sure. I think one of the most memorable experiences that the students have had at the events was something called Concert Under the Stars. And there's never stars because it's always still day, but it's a performance that we do outside at the school that we're at. And I've done that at both charter schools and public schools, multiple public schools that I've been at, and had the same experience at all of these. It's where the students, we set up the whole concert band outside. The choir can perform as well. So the students are doing an outdoor performance. The parents are invited to picnic, so they bring chairs or towels or blankets that they can put out in the schoolyard. And their families come. There's a playground, so the siblings can play on the playground while the parents are enjoying the performance. We also have refreshments, whether they're PTA sponsored or parent sponsored, and families can also enjoy that. So it's like kind of a celebration, and it's usually the last performance of the year. And recently, what we've started to do is collaborate with other schools in our district and community, where the elementary schools students can go on to, for example, middle schools that have bands as well. And those bands are also invited to perform, and then we all do a collaborative song at the end. So it's not just the students experiencing playing with other students that are older than them, but also the parents seeing what's available in their community. And it kind of brings everybody together to let the students know that even though they're part of a band, they're part of something bigger, and they have this support from everyone in their community. And it always comes across as a great event. And from the beginning of everybody setting up chairs to parents help tearing down things, it really is a big community effort of everyone coming together. And the takeaway is that students get to perform with classmates that have gone on to be in middle school, and they see their siblings do this, and they're excited about doing this as well. And so it's a really exciting event, and it kind of the culminating thing of bringing everyone together in the community is really exciting.
Thank you. And a theme that we're going to keep coming back to throughout these conversations is, what if you would say, the focus of your impact of what you really want the impact of that experience to be? What is kind of your main focus for that event, and how are you able to see if you achieved that?
I feel like it's most important for the students to know that even if they don't go on to be a musician, that they do have the backing of a community and they're part of something bigger. And being in this one group in band when they're 10 or 9 years old is part of something, to let them know that when they're part of a group, they have that backing and support of a whole bunch of people.
That sounds amazing. We're gonna ask one more question for Jess. Music teachers, arts teachers in the schools, whether you're full-time or a teaching artist, you have to juggle instruction, after school ensembles, performances, family communication, school events. How have you learned to manage all of that time across all of your responsibilities?
Well, a good way to do that is, it's a lot, but I make tons of lists. I have post-its all over the place. Lots of emails back and forth, but also asking for help, reaching out to other members in your school or being involved in events that you're not exactly making yourself, but, being part of another event that someone's, can't think of the word, like creating for you. But yeah, it's a lot of lists, a lot of lists, and just kind of going in order of what you need to do when, what needs to be, finished by when, reaching out to other support principals, community supports, asking parents to help. I know we're doing a musical right now, and I'm trying to reach out to families to help with costumes. And, our PTA has been a great help, and outside organizations. And yeah, it's a lot of community stuff. It really does tie everybody together. It takes a community to actually do it all.
I was trying to make a list in my head as you were speaking of the different stakeholders. Can we go through it again, right? Because that's huge. Who are the people? You said ask for help, which so many of us, right? We really struggle to
Right.
do that, especially when we're not as integrated into the school community,
Mm-hmm.
being there every day. So who would you say are kind of the stakeholders within that school community?
So I would say, it depends on who's involved. So say you have fourth and fifth graders involved, you can go to those teachers to ask for help. You can reach out to, say you're doing a production and certain people in the school, regardless of their title, are good at art. Go to them and ask for help. And most of the time, people are really excited to be involved and to be part of things like this, especially when it's for the kids. To reach out to families of to parents of the kids that are involved, principals, administration. And if you don't know anyone in the community, usually someone does. Someone always seems to know somebody that can help.
Mm.
Um, Outside organizations like Education Through Music, or just other teachers in the community. I've reached out to a couple different middle schools, and so teachers that are kind of going through the same thing as you. They'll be willing to help with your event if maybe you help with their event, so you could help each other out.
Thank you so much, Jess. We'll come back to Jess later in the group questions, but already kind of transitioned us talking about leadership. So our next panelist that I'd love to introduce is Principal Greta Rapchin. She is the principal of PS 72 in the Bronx. Welcome, Greta. Do you mind sharing with us a little bit of info about your career?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I am Greta Ratchin. I am in my 31st year as a New York City, or more specifically, a Bronx educator. I am born and raised in the Bronx, and I am a proud Bronxite. You can hear it in my voice when I talk. We have a certain way of speaking over here. I've spent a lot of my career as a fifth grade teacher. That was my sweet spot. That was the age that I really loved in the children. I went from being a classroom teacher to out of class positions. I was an AIS teacher for ELA. I was a data specialist, a test coordinator, worked my way up to assistant principal, and I am now in my 5th year as principal at PS 72.
Thank you so much. So first question for you, Principal Rapchin, or Greta.
Greta,
It's so
it's
hard for me.
fine.
I'm always in my teacher mode. Um, Looking across the arts initiatives, you've supported over the years, which has been the most meaningful for your students in your school community, and what made those meaningful and effective?
Well, it's hard to answer this question second because Jess actually took part of my my answer for this because the concert under the stars is definitely a major event for us. But overall, for an initiative or something to be impactful for our community, what's most important is having that community-centered performance. Because for us, these events, they're not just about highlighting our students because of course, we want to highlight our students, but it's also redefining the school, that we're not just a place for learning. We're a place where culture can come alive, almost like a cultural hub. It's a place where families and the community can be proud, they can feel connected, and even more importantly, feel invested in our school and in our students. One example is the concert under the stars. For me, that's a really important event because we truly open up the schoolyard gates and we invite everybody in. There are times where we're playing and we look across from the schoolyard and we can see our neighbors on their balconies dancing. And for me, that was a highlight because I'm also a community girl. I live across the street from school, so those are my neighbors on their balcony dancing and celebrating with us. And so it really is important for me to do that. Another really important event, something that we do every day, is to help celebrate one faction of our community is we go into our local nursing homes and our rehabilitation centers because we value our elders and it's something that we really want to instill in our children. So every year we make it a point to go to those places to bring happiness and spread love and joy through our students and the music that they create. So for us, they're impactful and they're important when they celebrate our students' identities and our community, when they foster partnerships with not only arts organizations like Education Through Music and Studio in a School, but also our community-based organizations and other schools. When Jess told you that we have the middle school students coming and performing, they don't just come from our own district. We also have a school that comes from District 11. So we're really trying to extend our borders and extend our reach. And then the other part, I think that I would say is that events like these concerts, what they do for us is they help bring in families who might not come to other school events, families who might not normally feel as connected to us. Through these performances, we get them to come in and to get a better view of the stuff that we have happening here.
That's wonderful. And I've seen it firsthand, the community coming out. Um, as the principal, you're kind of the first stop, when someone has an idea or an initiative. What makes you say yes?
Well, Jess will tell you I hardly say no. It's almost always a yes, and certainly when it comes to arts initiatives, Jess is usually the one who is asking for them or promoting them. And I've learned to trust Jess implicitly because there is no one more dedicated to our students. So saying yes is easy. But what do I look for? I look for events or initiatives that are inclusive. We want participation across our student body, across the cultures and languages and experiences of our children. We want our families to be represented and reflected in the initiatives that we put in. We want our families there not just as passive audience members, but actually as contributors. So something that would truly reflect our students and our families, include everybody, that's the kind of initiative we'll say yes to. The other is an initiative that allows for student voice or for student ownership.
Mm.
When they are creating and performing, composing, curating, whatever verb you want to put there, when they're putting out something, their work is deeper, their connection is more meaningful, and an initiative like that is certainly easier to sustain over time. And then the last I would say is that the initiative has to show some sort of connection to our climate, our culture here, and our learning goals. The arts build a sense of belonging. They improve attendance. Here at PS 72, we went from being at the bottom of the district for attendance when I first took over. We're now in the top third. And I really do believe that it is our arts initiatives that give students a sense of belonging, purpose, a sense of teamwork, a sense of being part of something larger. And so our attendance has approved. Also, something that can reinforce academics or academic skills. The arts definitely do that, right? It pushes children towards skills like collaboration, perseverance, critical thinking. So when you take all those things into play, it's easy to say yes. That's the easy job. Jess does all the work. I just say yes.
Well, you already kind of went into my next question. So organically, I was going to ask you because any of us who've worked within New York City public schools and worked with administrators, we know that the budget is really something that's very challenging to manage and to meet all of the needs of your school community and all of the members of your team, for your students. And yet you prioritize the arts every year. You've spoken a little bit about the value of the arts, but as a principal, what is it, and what would you encourage other leaders, other school leaders about why having the arts is so impactful in your school to your community?
Well, I feel like I said a lot of that, but
You did,
why,
you did. I just
why
wanted to give you one
arts,
more
right?
shot to make your message.
So I believe, and I do believe that our community believes that all of our students have talents. Not every student is an academic, not every student is going to be a scholar, but every student is amazing and special and has these beautiful talents. And it's our job, it's our responsibility to provide opportunities where students can discover what those talents are and then develop them. And through the arts, the students can do that. That's when they have their voice. That's when they have a sense of ownership. That's when they know that they can do great things and they're not being held back by their experiences, by their backgrounds, by any academic difficulties that they might have. The arts give them an opportunity for self-expression. They might not have the words to say what they're thinking, feeling, or what they want, but through the arts, they can do that. Through the arts, they're part, and I know I said it, of something larger, something bigger than themselves, and they have a part of creating this magic. And there's that shared goal with the children around them who might be very different from them, but because they have that shared experience and that shared goal, they broaden their horizons. They learn to accept others. They learn to think out of the box, and they just become more. And you could say more blank, more anything. You put any positive word in there, they just become more, and they become what we know they are, these wonderful, magical, talented, amazing creatures.
Thank you. That's beautiful. Speaking of being a part of something, I don't know that we acknowledged this before, but just how many years have you been at PS 72?
This is my third year here.
Third year. And how many students are in your band?
I think about, I don't know, 95 right now. Yeah.
Yeah, I see the wow mouse in the chat. Um, we'll have to talk more about how Jess does that, but I think in Jess's first year at 72, you had about 75 in the
Mhm.
band. So something really amazing for that school community and those students to be a part of for sure. So we're going to go to our last, but most certainly not least, panelist. I want to welcome Joanna Berenson. Joanna Berenson is the Borough Arts Director for the Bronx. Joanna, can you tell us a little bit about, your career before we get started?
Sure. So, hi everyone. I've been in the DOE for about 22 years now. I started off as a visual arts teacher. I was an assistant principal. I was a principal. I was a leadership coach with the Office of Teacher Effectiveness, with the rollout of Danielson for a number of years. And then I took this job with the Arts Office, which has been great. I've been here for a number of years.
Wonderful. That's some awesome work. Rolling out Danielson, I can only imagine. Uh, so can you, from your perspective as the borough arts director in the Bronx, can you share an example of a partnership that created meaningful opportunities for students and families?
I mean, there's so many. I
Maybe
can,
your top two.
there are so many. I mean, obviously right now I'm looking at ETM, I'm looking at PS72, and I'm looking at Jess, right? I think that has just created such an incredible partnership because it has not only affected PS72 and the wonderful students there with the 100 kids in the band, but it's also affected all of their families. Jess also works in our summer program over the summer where she's instructing kids from all over the Bronx in grades 4 through 7 in band and beginner band, intermediate. And she's also continuing to grow her own band program, and kids from PS72 come to that summer program. So there's like this ripple effect that's happening, which is really incredible from that. I think that there are just so many amazing partnerships, and I think when a partnership is really connected to not only just the teacher and the students in that school, but the families outside of the school, the administration, and they're able to kind of dig their roots into all of those places, you have this opportunity for something lasting. And that's, I think, really exciting, right? And you hear about these partnerships that year after year the school is like, I want to go back and partner with this arts organization because they've had such an impact with my entire community. The parents ask for it every year, right? The students are asking for it every year. So it becomes part of the school community. And I think that's what really makes a partnership really meaningful.
It's beautiful. And I think we can all say from our experience on my side of education through music and on the school side that as great as a model and a program is, the partnership is only as strong as the educator is strong and is supported and is committed, so not every teacher that comes through is a just par, but with time, right, that growth arc, that they're able to build that capacity.
No,
um
not everyone is a Jess Par.
yeah, I mean, we definitely not. um from your experience, you have such a broader perspective. What are some of the community or city resources that arts educators often overlook as available and accessible to them?
I mean, there are tons of resources, right? We have city council grants, CASA grants. The Arts Office offers grants every year that schools can apply for. We have our Principal Fellows program, which Greta is currently in our Principal Fellows program, where we work with a principal around a goal that they have, and we use the arts to help solve that goal. So one of those things might be bringing in a partner or working with arts organizations to try to achieve that goal. We also have our free summer programming for students across the Bronx. There are things like materials for the arts, right? Get all of your free materials, right? So there's, I think, so many opportunities for resources throughout our city that could be a grant, could be a free program, could be free performances, free trips to museums. There's so many opportunities. I think what it really requires is a little bit of digging around, and looking at all the different culturals.
And I know that, Arts and Education Roundtable, who hosted us here today, they do such an amazing job of trying to make all of those resources very available, to people who are looking for them. How do you get to know what might be available in your specific district? Kind of who do you recommend going to, when you're in the Bronx, and finding out what's available to me, what's site specific.
I welcome anyone who wants to contact me. I'm happy to share whatever I know. I'm also, happy to share whatever the arts office is offering. And a lot of times, if a school is looking for a partnership, I'm able to recommend certain partners that might work for them. So that would be one way of moving forward. I mean, you can also go directly to a school and talk to a school. You can, meet arts teachers and think about what would be a good partnership, because, that partnership is really, I mean, the word partner is in there, right? It's not just about a teaching artist or an arts organization coming in and doing the work in a school. It's about really having that deep partnership with that teacher, that time for planning, that time for collaboration, even getting to know the administration, right? To become rooted in that community. So I think that's a big part of it as well.
And you already kind of have been leaning into my last question, which is something that we want to keep talking about is, as someone who sees lots of partnerships in lots of different schools, what is it that you think makes that a true partnership and reciprocal, between the school and the partner, and not just kind of a one-time transaction?
I mean, definitely that word partner, right? And I think time for collaboration, right? If the cultural organization or the arts partner just comes in to the school and they haven't met with the teacher prior, they don't know the demographic, they don't know the students they're going to be working with, it's really hard to come in and have, a solid foundation to stand on. If they're able to have time to collaborate and really work with the teacher and plan with the teacher, they'll have more to offer. I think it's also, how are we going to pull in the community? How are we going to bring the community in to see what we're working on? Everyone is there for the kids. The kids are first everywhere you go, right? That's the goal. And, I know that, principals get into the job because they want to see great things happen for kids, whether it's academically, socially, and emotionally, or artistically. And the same thing for teachers. And the same thing for people who work in arts organizations. We're all here because we love kids and we want children to have the best experiences. So how do we amplify what's happening so that everybody can see what great experiences these kids are having?
Thank you so much. So with that, I am going to kind of turn that question to the larger group. But before we jump into our group dialogue, I know people are working on pulling up the personal action plan in the chat. Thank you, Kinsey, for offering also a Word doc that people can open and edit. So during this time, as we're talking about more specifically how these partnerships are built with the whole group, you really want to be thinking about using the sections of the document to map out your stakeholders, thinking about what is the impact you want to make, and how you might be measuring that impact, and really starting to shape those first steps of your action plan. As you come up with questions, and as we're talking about these things and you're thinking about your own personal project, we welcome those to come into the chat. We are going to have a Q&A later, but we really want to be as conversational as we can and as responsive to your thoughts and questions as those come up in real time. So please feel free, welcome to bring up questions in the chat, things that are kind of burning for you, that you really want to use your access to these wonderful panelists to get those questions answered today. So as Joanna was already kind of sharing about, what makes a partnership a true partnership, I'd love to know across all of your roles, what makes an art program truly connected to the broader community?
I'll jump in.
Um,
So,
Anybody?
all right. So I'll
So,
go ahead, Miss Parr.
oh, sorry, I can't hear anything.
Do you want to jump in? Go ahead.
Oh, oh, sorry. Yeah, I couldn't hear. I think we were talking at the same time. I was just saying, definitely, like Ms. Ratchet was saying, is bringing in the community to the school and bringing the kids to the community. I feel like once you get the parents who are the community, that's what's going to start, that partnership and, that sustainability of the connection between the school and outside the school and going to the nursing homes and just doing things immediately in the vicinity that the people live in that come to your school.
And I want to push a little bit further on that too, because we kind of alluded to that you have this whole band program, right? Like you have this specific ensemble that is kind of performance ready. Can you tell us a little bit about how you build that ensemble? Because you don't have instruments on site, right, for your students. So there's a lot of components that go just to get that group in order to do these performances. Do you mind walking us through that a little bit?
Yeah. So, well, we start with doing like an instrumental night where all kids and families come in so the parents hear the information about the program, and that's where they decide what they want to play. And the next step is figuring out how we're going to get these instruments. Instruments are expensive, and to get the kid the instrument that they want, so that they'll be actually motivated to practice on it and to play. We actually work with outside vendors, outside music companies, and we work with them to help make payment plans or help with scholarships or help do things to help these parents get these instruments in their hands. So the majority of the students in our band actually are financially invested. Their parents are renting these instruments. And so there's that buy-in from the families again. And no, even though no child is denied based on financial obligations, there are things like scholarships and outside organizations that help donate instruments to specific students that might need it. And, just over the years, trying to get instruments donated to your school that can be given to those students that aren't able to financially rent an instrument. So you have to make sure that every student has an instrument in their hand first, based on what the families can afford, and we want to make sure that every child that wants to be involved is involved. So that's why it's important to reach out to communities for possible funding or fundraising. We don't do a lot of like fundraising at the school, but there's outside things like Donors Choose and a whole bunch of education.
I think we lost you there for a second, Jess. But I would love to bring in Principal Rachin too, especially in this idea of bringing in bringing in people from the community who want to support the school. And Jess was saying we don't necessarily do fundraising, but I think that aspect of bringing people in is what brings the investment. Do you mind sharing about that and what you wanted to add, Principal Rachin?
So I was going to say that one of the greatest supports that we have for our music program is the CASA grant. So we've received the CASA grant each year. I think we're in our third year of getting it. And that's through our councilwoman. And that really does help fund our after school bands program, as well as our morning choir program. And it helps to get the buses so that we can go to different events. It helps fund the musical with the costuming and the stage necessities. So the CASA grant really is very important for us. It also funds our partnership with ETM, right? And through ETM and having our teaching artist, we get a teaching artist from ETM 3 days a week. So that Miss Parr, 2 days, well, we have her 3 days, but for 2 of those days, Miss Parr is able to provide small group instruction during the school day, while the ETM artist takes over the general music program. And that really is an integral aspect to our music program because it gives the children tailored instruction and weekly practice during the school day. And I stress that because not every student can stay after school, right? So they're getting this instruction during the school day, tailored to their instrument. And I really do think that that's the hallmark to the program that causes our children to learn their instrument so quickly, besides just how fabulous Jess is. We do use donors choose. We do prioritize, of course I have to worry about all of my instructional supplies, my books and my materials, but as soon as those academic necessities are taken care of, it's like I just told Jess, we've got money. So Jess just put together a list of instruments that she wanted to buy. I think there's 2 or 3 tubas on the list because for some reason our little girls love playing the tubas. It's fabulous. So we make sure that, as much as we can afford to put into instruments, so we do, because we do want to build how many instruments we have in-house to alleviate the need to rent them later on. And another really important connection, thinking about the broader community, right? I'm part of the District 8 community. And when we perform at the District 8 Arts Festival, or we perform at other events, we're going to be performing at the Soapbox Derby event in May, and that's going to be schools all across the district. My colleagues know what we're creating here. PS 36 just donated 30 music stands to us. They were like, listen, we don't need these anymore. Do you want them? We'll take them. Jess still has some connections in District 11. We had a friend in District 11 say, hey, we're not using these instruments. Do you want them? So it's also reaching out to other schools and saying, this is what we got going on. This is what we need. If you have anything that we can take, we take it. Again, I really don't say no. I just say, yes, I want it. Yes, I want it. And each one of those things helps our students stay in the program.
I'd love to build on because something that keeps coming up is CASA. And Joanna, you mentioned it, kind of earlier on, and Jess and Principal Rachin have been talking about it. Can you explain to us what CASA is and how people might be able to figure out if it's something available to them?
Are you asking me? Or are you asking Greta?
Oh, sorry, I was asking you.
Okay. CASA is a grant that comes through the city council person that you can apply for. It's a yearly grant that comes out.
And do you have any recommendations for people, as you know, like different partners who've been able to receive those funds?
They're widely given. So I think as long as you do the research and you apply for them and you get it in a timely manner, you're likely to get lucky as long as you're pretty thorough with your application.
Wonderful. And we have a good amount of schools that we work with, Education Through Music, who receives this funding. And kind of going back to the idea of bringing in your community, one thing that we try to encourage our partner schools to do, and PS 72 does a lot, is to invite city council people into the school, right? Bring them into your music class when you have, concerts, performances. Give them an opportunity to even greet the audience, right? As, their city council district for many of the families who live around that school. And that's really a way to help the city council people, know who these schools are, get closer to their constituents, in their district, and, kind of help support you in that pursuit to get funding. And people are writing, yeah, you can stretch that cost of funding really far. It is amazing. It can go towards all of your after school programs, not just the arts ones, any programming that you have after school for your students. And all of us who work in schools know that there's such need for funding and also after school programming for our students in New York City. So it's a really an awesome grant that people should look into more.
Can I jump back a little bit into what we were saying before? Is that okay?
Yes, absolutely. We went on a little tangent, but please.
I just wanted to come back to the idea of bringing in community through your performances. And I think, I think about it almost in tiers, right? So like you start off, you're performing in school, right? And then you do performances at the nursing home or outside of school or at our festival or wherever, the District 8 festival, right? And then the idea of like maybe you want to invite middle schools in to see your band at the elementary school level, or middle schools want to invite an elementary school in, so you can start to have that pathway so that you can have these students who have learned so much with these band instruments go to a school that offers band so they can continue that arts education, right? So I think that's a big part too. And then also, how do we bring in like outside community, right? The Night Under the Stars is a wonderful example, but like the broader community, the community within, our DOE or their steps they're going to take through their arts education in the DOE, and then how are you doing it in the school? I think that's all really important. So just thinking about like that pathway for your art form too, because that's part of building your arts community in a broader sense.
Thank you. And I'd love to hear on that same idea, because I do think that's one of the most impactful things that you can do as an arts educator and as a school is support your students, pathway to the next school that will continue to foster that experience. But it's, can be very overwhelming for families, right? They know what school they might be zoned for, but they might not really understand what's available for them or what their options are outside of that school. I'd be curious, Principal Ratchin and Jess, how is it that you kind of work with families to support that momentum, that impact keeps building for those students?
Well, definitely, we try to make the parents aware of which schools will maintain the momentum that we've been creating in the elementary school. We've partnered with, for example, 125, where their principal and music teacher came to our building to see how we're running our music program so that they can continue to build theirs and they can connect with our students. Jess has organized a trip from our school to one of the closest middle schools where she went with our band students, and our band students shadowed band students from the middle school for the day, had a jam session, had lunch with them, took classes with them, really sort of opening their eyes to the possibilities of continuing music and seeing which schools offer it. The summer program at MS 180, while it's in a different district, is something that we greatly promote because we want the children to know that here's a quality music program and arts program that they can follow through with, even though it's not in our district. Of course, we wish it was, but what is most important is the children and their future and continued success. So we partner with MS 180 for that. And I know there's the Saturday program too, right, Jess? Is that over at MS 180? Where is the Saturday program?
So the Saturday program is called Salute to Music, which has been around for years. And this year, it's being hosted at MS 180,
Yeah.
which is a more localized area for our students.
And I'll add one more thing to that because, both Salute to Music and the summer program are through the Arts Office. We also offer our Bronx Borough Arts Pathway event every year. So, for example, for band, it'll be one night and all the elementary school bands perform first. And that way, all of the elementary school families can go and see the middle school bands perform next. And all of the middle school families can then go and see the high schools perform next. So you get an idea of where the programs are and what they have to offer. And you walk away with a catalog of all of the schools that have performed and have these arts programs. And you can get an idea of what there is in the Bronx that your child can attend. So there's that as well.
And if you teach in the Bronx and that's something you want to get involved in, how do you become part of the pathway, that performance?
So the arts teacher, the school-based arts teacher would apply. So even if they are collaborating with a partner, it's fine to apply to the festival. Our application's just closed for this year. It's coming up on April 28th, 29th, and 30th, but we'll have it again next year. So just keeps giving.
And what about, because I know that all of you are involved with the summer music program. Can you explain how that initiative, kind of began? Because that's so much of what we're talking about is like, how did Jess get involved with 180 and the Bronx is overseeing it?
So in year one, it started out at Celia Cruz, and it was grades 7 through 12. For band, for strings at Celia Cruz was grades 4 through 12. And recently we've added choir at Celia for grades 7 through 12. But we realized in year 2 that we weren't hitting our younger learners. And Jess came back to the DOE like a gift. So we realized it was a great opportunity to pull Jess in to work with another teacher of ours at MS 180 to really build out the band program there. So they're doing grades 4 through 7 there. So we have 4 through 12 throughout the Bronx for band. We have 4 through 12 for choir, and we have 4 through 12 for strings, and we have 4 through 7 for dance at MS 180. So we're really trying to build those pathways over the summer so students can either start an instrument, get better at their instrument, really work on their craft, and be able to continue in their art form, really.
And is this funded by the arts office?
It is, yeah.
That's amazing. So if teachers, if they want to get involved or if they want to get their students involved in like a program that already exists like this, what do you recommend?
So the application for our summer programs has just been released. I think for 180, it's just been released. For Celia Cruz, it's coming out maybe right after break. So that being said, if people need the application, they can reach out to me. I'm happy to share it. If teachers are interested, they can also reach out to me. Yeah.
So I love that we kind of went with a specific example that we weren't necessarily thinking about sharing, but I think it's great because now we have kind of something in our minds to break down, right? Because there's potentially arts educators in this room or, nonprofit leaders in this room that are thinking like, that's what I want to create. Like I want to do my own in South Brooklyn or in Manhattan or Harlem. So I'd love to ask you all, when trying to create some new, broader impact partnership, where's the best place to start? Do you start with the students, the families, your colleagues, the partners? What are your all's recommendations?
Well, for me,
I
so
would say reaching out to other.
No, it's okay, Jess. You have a lag, but go ahead.
Sorry, me? Okay. I would say reaching out to other teachers in community schools to see kind of what they're doing. And I feel like once you know what other teachers around you are doing, you got more heads thinking of the same thing. You can kind of reach out more to the community and see what you can accomplish.
you see, and I was going to say, I reach out to my colleagues, right? Think about, and I think so. Jess and I are saying the same thing. She's reaching out to her teacher colleagues, and I'm reaching out to my administration colleagues and asking them, hey, what are you doing? I have no problem asking for help or saying, I don't know. What can I do? Where can I grow? And quick anecdote, I remember my first year here talking with ETM saying I would love to build a music program and I don't know how. I don't know where to start. I don't know what to do. You guys brought me Jess. And when I interviewed Jess, I said the same thing to her. I don't know how. I need somebody who knows what they're doing. I need somebody who comes with the ideas. I need somebody to be a guiding force. And so between ETM and Jess and my colleagues, because my colleagues have used ETM, always reaching out and asking because you get steered in the right direction and you decide whether it works for you or not. But when you know what other people are doing, it just opens your mind to the possibilities. I never thought, we talked about reaching out to the broader and broader and broader community last month or earlier this month. Well, we're in April. So last month, we took the band to Brooklyn and we performed at the 93rd annual NYSESPA conference. So here we were now performing for principals and teachers and staff from across the entire city. And so really just letting them know, look what these 4th and 5th graders are capable of. And so definitely reaching out to colleagues.
And I think for schools that don't know where to start, survey your students, survey your families, right? What do they want from their arts programming? I think that's an important step too, because the more buy-in a school has around their arts program, the longer it's going to last.
That's such a great point. I can say on the partner side, that I've talked to administrators who have thought, this is where we are, and this is what's in our community, and I think this is what, our school would like. But until you actually survey your students and your families, and to bring a program in that people are just not as excited about, it's already going to set, the impact on. um what about, you know all these partnerships where we're thinking about the different things that you do you feel like there's any kind of commonality of, what do strong collaborations all kind of have early on in the process?
I would say time for planning,
Mm,
and talking to each other and getting on the same page about what the expectations are of the program. If if everyone goes into it with a different idea of what the outcome is going to be, what students are going to get out of it, what the process is going to look like, it's not going to be as successful. And I think that diving into the time to spend on collaboration, right? And not necessarily just on Zoom, maybe it's in person, right? Forming a relationship, right? Everything is going to be better if there's a strong relationship. So I would start there.
so it seems kind of twofold: planning and also giving yourself a reasonable timeline to enact it.
And having a
Principal.
relationship that's beyond just let's sit down and look at paper.
Mhm. Principal Ratchin, were you going to add something?
No, I just think openness, right? That
Mm,
idea of planning and the time to talk things through. I think it has to come with an openness for ideas. You might have an idea of how something is going to be, but then you can hear more possibilities or something different. And I just think you have to be open to suggestions and ideas.
And flexible.
mm.
I mean, schools are living and breathing, right? So if you can't work with the crazy changing, this person's out today and this class has a field trip, and you have to be ready to kind of roll with it a little bit.
It's true. And that flexibility, it's not just so two things I'll say. That flexibility is not just like on my part or on Jess's part. Our entire staff has to buy into it, right? Because
Mm.
again, when I mentioned that our students have small group instruction during the school day, the teachers had to buy into that because at first they were like, wait, he's missing math this week, or wait, he's missing social, or he's missing ELA. And the teachers had to understand, okay, it's a 6 week rotation, just creates this marvelous schedule. The children miss the same subject once every 6 weeks. And the teachers had to buy in that as students were improving their musical skills, their academic skills were moving along as well, right? And so that there was this cross curriculum impact from the work that she was doing in the small group instruction. And so that really took the teachers being flexible as well. And right now we're getting into grade 4 musical season. So we're moving around the program to get extra rehearsals for different classes. And the teachers are all on board with that. And then going back to something else that Joanna said, and I think it was really spot on, is that, I might think I know what the community wants, but I have to make sure that I'm actually right. And so at our school leadership team, I always discuss the planning for staffing, the planning, the budget for the music program, for the arts program. And I speak to them about how important it is for me to have the arts for all of our students. And right now, we have a school leadership team that shares that belief and shares in who believes wholeheartedly in the value of the arts program as well. So they are fully on board with us putting the money towards the arts department. So it is really important to have that school leadership team buy-in as well.
There's so many things that I want to build off of, these comments that you all have made. One thing that I'd love for you to share on, and maybe Jess, you can share, because something that I know when it comes to getting classroom teacher buy-in is that it's so important not only that they see that there's an impact to the students, but that they also feel some type of ownership when those students, perform and are, going out to these events. How is it just that you find a way to kind of bring the classroom teachers in into what's happening in music and making them feel like a part of what's going on?
Well, we're lucky to have really supportive teachers at our school. So we have teachers attending events on off hours and just always coming to cheer kids on at festivals. But for example, with the fourth grade musical, and Miss Ratchin can attest to this, we always try to have teachers and administration be part of the show and do something silly just so that they can
I
be
love that.
part of the event. And the kids love to see it. And it's, like last year, I think all of our fourth grade teachers and Miss Ratchin did like they sang their little verse of a blues song, but it had to do with being an administrator or being a classroom teacher. And I feel like it gives them kind of like, hey, we're part of this too. These are our kids. We're an event.
I think that's so important. In working with a lot of early career educators, I've seen them running around, trying to put on a whole performance by themselves because there's fear that, like, I don't want to ask people to do this because it's for the music concert. But people want to be a part of that event, right? They are so invested in, their students and their children in the school. And I think that is that first step, right, of bringing it outside of the classroom is how do you make your colleagues in the school feel like they're not just the ones that are having to teach the math and the science, but they're also the ones that are a part of the big performances and the things that get celebrated because they are, right? We know that they are. Um, I wanted to go to back also to a comment that Principal Rachin made because um, I think sometimes it's a little bit of a leap of faith, kind of embracing what an art educator might want to do, especially working with arts educators, artists first, right? Musicians first, artists first, and always coming with a background, right? And a particular preference towards a type of music or an event and an ensemble. Um, how do you how do you go about, trying to be flexible and embrace that, that passion of theirs, right? Like doing a choir would be so much easier than Jess's band, but that is really her skill set and a beautiful thing you bring. But, how did you get on board for 3 days after school and all these instruments and, it's just something really big to take on that could have gone south, could have not worked.
It's true. And flexibility is not a word that's usually used to describe me or as a character trait that I have. No, it's not usually. It really came down to just trust, right? Through my partnership with ETM, you guys brought me Jess. You spoke about how talented and amazing she was. When I met her, I got the vibe of how dedicated she is to the students. And so that laid the foundation for the trust. And there were quite a few times I said to her, this makes me nervous. I'm a little worried. You see, I'm already like scratching just thinking about some of those conversations. And she's like, don't worry, I got this. And I'm like, all right, well, go ahead. And with each new initiative or each new thing that she brought to the table, and with each little step forward in trust that I did, I began to trust her more and more. And now when she comes to me with something new, I say, well, Jess, I trust you. So now that trust is there, and she could, I don't know, tell me something crazy that she wants to do. I don't know. And I'll just say yes. So it really was a very hesitant trust in the beginning. It was that leap of faith because I just really did not know. But that trust truly grew after every successful performance. And no matter what, the reason I could have that leap of faith is because I knew at the heart of it all was something that was for the kids, something that would let us again show off how amazing our kids are. And so that made it easier to do. It wasn't easy. Again, I'm not flexible, but it made it easier. And each time it became easier and easier. And now I don't even bat a lash. It's like, okay, okay.
That's the favorite principle to work with, but it takes time to get there. Well, we've talked a lot about what makes these things work, but we know that often initiatives, partnerships, that they fall apart, right? Or they don't have the impact that we were hoping they would have. I'd love to hear, what are some common barriers that you've experienced or you've witnessed, and how have you moved past them? Go for it.
Okay, all right. I was waiting to see if Jess was gonna answer. So, from my perspective, the barrier becomes state testing, right?
Mm,
Everyone is worried about academics and making sure that the students are performing academically. And so we have to make sure that everybody knows that yes, we are dedicated to the arts. It doesn't mean that we're not dedicated to academics. I will tell you that on last year's state tests, PS 72 had their highest proficiency rates ever. We still have a long way to go, but it shows that by infusing the arts into our program, because I really do put a large part of the success on the shoulders of our arts program, but by infusing the arts program, we are bringing up our academics and we are helping our children achieve academically. So that argument that we're faced with sometimes about the loss of instructional time, we push back because we have the evidence to show that it's working. And as I mentioned earlier, our attendance went from the bottom of the district to now in the top third. So children are coming to school more because they have reason to. They have their lessons today, or they have band after school. And yes, band is Jess's wheelhouse, but she is an amazing choir teacher. So we have a third and fourth grade choir now, third, fourth, fifth grade choir now as well. And so, yeah, I would say that that's one of the barriers. A sort of odd barrier to have. We have such a large band that we can't do certain events because it is difficult to accommodate our bands. I mentioned how we performed at the NYSESPA conference, and I'll be honest, in the beginning, they were like, well, can you bring maybe 70? And our answer was no, we're all or nothing. You get all of us or you don't get us at all. And so that's a silly barrier. It's an unfortunate barrier, but it's a barrier that we don't mind having because more than half of our fourth and fifth grade students are in the band. So that's a different type of barrier. Yeah.
I would say another barrier that always comes up with art programs is funding. Um, Trying to figure out, we can't do a band program because we don't have funding for instruments, or we can't do an arts program because we don't have school. So just looking at outside things like, we mentioned Donors Choose and reaching out to communities. And I know there's a lot of red tape when it comes to fundraising, but talking to people to figure out how you can do fundraising or how you can reach out to community vendors to help maybe help sponsor different events. But I feel like a lot of communities would definitely be open for that, especially if it's serving the families that they're in. But I know funding is always hard, especially when it comes to instruments and getting instruments and then getting instrument repairs and buying things for students like consumables, like things they'll consistently need. Or I bet art programs the same way, buying paints and buying, different things that they need in order to do this program. So I think it's just doing research. So Joanna had mentioned materials for the arts and just knowing what's available in order to make this a possibility.
I think there's also other places to reach out to for instruments, right? Like Harmony, Mr. Opus, Holland
Yeah,
Opus, right? There's a few different organizations.
Save the music.
Yeah, you save the music, right? There's a few of them that you could reach out to.
What have you seen, Joanna? What are the kind of common barriers, or what might, cause the partnership to fail or the impact to not really be what people wanted?
I think communication.
Mm.
Lack of communication really gets in the way. Like when in doubt, over communicate. I think that's better. Particularly like I'm not speaking for Greta right now because Greta is wonderful in every sense of the word, but some principals are so overwhelmed that it's so hard to read a long email. They will just read maybe the first couple of sentences and then they don't have time for it and then they forget about it. And I get it, right? I get it. So, the long emails maybe are not the way to go. Shorter emails, not too many emails. It's a hard balance, but I think, over communicating and often.
Yeah, I want to second what Joanna just said because that might be one of the most small but important takeaways is that if all of your communication with your partner is via email, um, principals get so many emails, and you have to be able to be flexible to the type of communication that works with your partner. This is something that we support our teachers with a lot too. Like, you're in the building. Why are you emailing your principal? Can you go and try to talk to them? Because then you're not at, on the 300 emails they have in their list. Sorry, what were you going to say?
It also may not be the principal that you need to work with. Like, the principal might be the initial contact, but then the principal might say, okay, I'm designating this other person to take over this partnership and they're going to manage it. And that's actually a really smart move of a principal because they can't manage everything that's happening all the time or they wouldn't be able to get anything done. So if they've designated somebody, then it's a great move to really have good connection and relationship building with that person that they've designated.
Absolutely, huge. And then, like you said, over communicate, right? Copy everyone on the emails. If you go and you have that in-person conversation, follow it up in written form, in an email, put things on people's calendars because not everyone uses one, method of communication, and then that can really make the wheels fall off the train. Um, we can keep going and going, but I do want to create an opportunity for people who have any questions, broad questions, specific questions for one of our panelists. You can write it in the chat. You can, raise your hand, and we can, we'd love to bring you on mic and ask your question, if anyone has any. Um, no pressure. I see Hannah with a raised hand. Hannah, do you mind just unmiking and sharing?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. This is a question for Principal Ratchin. And full disclosure, I'm Joanna's colleague in the arts office, but I wanted to ask Principal Ratchin, you shared so many important building blocks about how you build this work over time, so that there's great buy-in across your whole community. Some of what you shared, though, is about funding or funded partnerships, things like that. Can you talk about how you plan for sustainability? What are some of the levers you try to pull, or what are some of the things you try to plan towards over time so that when that funding ultimately sunsets, or when the partner, unfortunately has to move on to a different school site or something like that, what are the things you put in place over time as a school leader to make sure that the wonderful thing you have built over time doesn't go away?
And that is a really important question also because, thinking about when we go away, right? I'm 31 years. I'm not going to be here for another 30 years, 31 years as an educator. So thinking about sustainability, one of the things that we do is we do try to maximize our budget. So we do try to purchase things that have longevity. So we try to purchase our own instruments. Like I said, I just gave Jess a shopping list, a budget to go shopping so that we can have some of those instruments in-house. We also say yes to interns and student teachers. So Jess is instrumental in being a collaborator and a partner teacher for all of these new teachers who are getting their feet wet, because if we can replicate Jess, we can replicate this program in other schools. We can maintain our program if Jess decides to move on or when I decide to move on. So it really is about having this idea of thinking to the future, not only living in the here and the now. I will tell you that at the beginning of the year, I set aside money for busing so that we can get to events, because we know that a lot of the events are outside of the school day. So I know that from the very onset of the school year, I have to earmark money just for that. And this is stuff that I've grown to know over the years. I didn't know that about busing in the beginning. And ETM would jump to our rescue and provide buses for some of our events. So as time goes on and you learn the nuances and everything that's involved, then you know to take those steps. I know now every year, come around March, April, right around this time of the year, the CASA grant starts, the emails start about that, and making sure that I'm forging those relationships with our community partners, with our politicians, and creating such a strong connection that it's a connection to PS 72. It's not a connection to Principal Ratchin. It's not a connection to Miss Parr. It's a connection to the school so that if we leave, that connection stays there. So I hope that answered the question.
That was such a great question. Thank you. Um, Anyone else want to ask any questions? You can post them in the chat or you can raise a hand. One thing as we keep going on, if anyone is willing to share out, as we're moving towards the end of our time, a project that you feel inspired to take on, something that you want to build or a new partnership that you want to try because of this session, we would love to hear about it. We'd love to maybe even give any feedback of who we think you could start with, while you have people in this room that are connected to so many great colleagues. So please don't be shy. But so I would love, as we're coming towards our last few minutes, to go back to the idea of impact, right? We have all these great ideas, but how do you know that what you did was made an impact with your students, right? There you have to kind of backwards plan about, what the result is and what that outcome will look like and how you will measure it. And something that Principal Rachin brought up, which I think is, of course, huge meaningful impact numbers, is talking about student attendance. Um, you know, can you help us explain, if someone is trying to build an initiative and say, like, I want to know that, students are coming, more frequently to school, now that we have, this partnership going on, who could they go to within the school to kind of help get that, previous data maybe of what it looked like before they were there, and then, you know, obviously they could track their own student attendance, but how would you recommend someone do that? Because that is truly meaningful data.
Oh, so that it really depends on who you have in your school. So you could start with your school secretary. Your pupil accounting secretary runs all your reports, and you can have her run a historical attendance report for students in the band. And you can
Mhm.
see what their attendance was the years when they weren't in band, and then the years that they are in band, which is what we did. And to see whether or not their individual attendance improved. Of course, you could look at the school as a whole. Has the school as a whole improved in attendance, and knowing that they were part of it? But really, I would say it's important to go down to the nitty gritty and look at individual students. One of the other things that we did is we looked at the growth in attendance for students who were not in band versus students who were in band, right? So look at anybody who made growth and see how much growth, and then trying to identify trends and patterns as to why they had growth. And obviously, there's lots of different factors that can impact a student's attendance, but really looking to see, are the students in band showing greater growth and improvement in attendance than other students? And for us, the answer was a yes. But I would say your pupil accounting secretary is probably the easiest one. New York City schools have access to New Visions. New Visions, you can create student groups and you can track their attendance through there. There's also the Insights data tool that you can use. So those are just some of the things that you could look at.
And as an admin, is this data that you're also is very useful to you as well? So if a teaching artist came and said, like, this is something that I'd love to know, would it be something that you would want to invest in?
Absolutely. If you're having positive impact beyond just developing a skill or a talent, then why not go for it, right? And if I can show you with my attendance, or I can show you with my state test scores that we are growing and improving, that's all the more reason to keep these initiatives moving.
Thank you. We have a couple questions in the chat. We have a question from Jenna, and I would love to direct this to Jess, because Jess has not always worked with Principal Ratchin, and someone who is not flexible but very flexible and extremely supportive. So Jess, I'd love to direct this question to you. What do you recommend to a teaching artist who works in a school with people who are not so willing and open, and that also if they've kind of been shifted to work with a coordinator who's not responsive, how would you kind of try to build your program in that environment?
Yeah, so I worked at a place like that. It was really hard, and you just have to, like Mr. Ratchin touched on earlier, you kind of just have to prove yourself. You have to prove that what you're doing is in the best interest of the kids, and that it will work, and that you know what you're doing. Because I went to a school that had no music program, and to tell a school that had no music program that you want to pull kids out of ELA or math, that's going to throw up a lot of red flags. But in order to, there has to be someone in your corner to be like, yes, we're going to help you enforce this. Try and yeah, I guess it's just showing them that you can do it and what it does for the students, whether it's the students' attitudes in the school day, whether they're happier. It doesn't have to be as much as attendance, but just are they putting more effort in on days where they want to go to a band rehearsal, or just little things to look at to show some kind of measurement that you're actually doing what you say you're going to do.
And what were kind of
Time.
the first things that you would do to try to start building that trust? Like what were the kind of the first initiatives you would take?
Definitely have a plan, like a mapped out plan where you could tell them what you want to do and how you're going to do it. Because a lot of time, leaders of a school, they want something, but they don't know how to get it. And they've never had this before. And they're like, sure, we want this, but we don't know how to do it. And you have to be able to say, okay, well, we're going to do this first, and then we're going to do this. You got to make them understand that there is this pathway and show it to them in reasonable ways that they understand, and it's not terrifying.
Thank you. There's a couple great questions from Linda in here, which I think might be best for you, Joanna. She says, as a teaching artist who works in different schools, how can we foster these partnerships effectively to get the respective communities involved?
Sure. I think visibility is huge. So how are you making your program visible? I mean, the arts, whatever art form it is, brings joy, right? It makes kids happy. It supports their social emotional health. How do you broadcast that and what's happening out to the broader community, to the school community, to the parents, to the administration, to other teachers? I mean, I haven't seen, every time I see Jess's band perform, the kids are smiling, even though they're playing an instrument with their mouth. They're still right? So like you can still see the happiness that's coming through. And I think because of that, it makes school a better place to be. It makes math a better place to be. So if we're able to make that clear connection to everyone, to the outside community, to the families, to the broader school community, it'll be a lot easier to kind of build that connection and partnership.
Which is a lot, right? We know it's one thing to plan a performance, right, in the school. If you're, a new educator, all of the parts that go into putting on that performance, and you have to engage the classroom teachers, you have to get the parents in and make sure you advertise it. There's so much community involvement just in having a school concert for that visibility.
What's helpful too is tying a concert into something else that's happening at the school. So if there's an awards night happening, if there's something where they want, parents in to fill out, I don't know, a survey, bringing food, right? Having food there, if there's a way to pull food in. I mean, every family loves to come for some snacks. So all of those things help bring families in to kind of broaden that.
Yeah, and I think that idea of building on an event that maybe the school already does, that's pre-existing, right? because that kind of leads to Linda's next question, which I think also is a great question, is, how do you go beyond that kind of guest role where you're, I have my partnership I'm
Yeah.
bringing in to do this thing, to authentically co-creating programming that reflects that school. What advice do you all have for Linda on that?
Just to bounce off, like if there is an award ceremony, everyone loves to see their child get an award. And then if the band or the chorus or the, dance group performs at that ceremony, that can really help too.
What would you add, Principal Ratchin? How might a teaching artist start to really, become collaborative with you and understand the community? What recommendations would you say if someone's coming into your school?
I think it would be important to sit down. So, like for us, we build our yearly calendar in July. So we have the whole year mapped out with the events that we want to do. So I would say for the teaching artists to come in and say, okay, so what's already on the table? And where can I fit in and where can I help enhance and enhance something that's already there? I think to be important and to make themselves an integral part of the community by jumping on things that are already existing. So I think that that would help create that sense of true partnership. So I'll give you an example. Like we do warm winter wishes. It was a way my first year as principal to introduce myself to the community. So we stood outside on the coldest day of December handing out hot chocolate and cookies to anybody who drove by, who walked by. It didn't matter if they were a PS72 student or not, a PS72 family or not. And then when Jess came along, it was like, well, we need to add music to this. So there they are at 7:30 in the morning singing and playing their instruments now. So finding those events that have become sort of the school's traditional events and then elevating them based upon the skills and talents of the teaching artist.
I can add to that too, on the partner side of it is typically we have limited bandwidth, right, of how many different schools and teachers we can partner with. And so in those kind of sign-on conversations when you're talking with a new partner is really making sure that the goals of your program align with theirs, right? Because people are looking for different things. So if it's really truly your hope to co-create with that school and to not, come in and come out with that program, finding the questions and the that time with that, the administrators or whoever that you're partnering with to really talk about that this is what we need, and to do that, going back to the communication, going back to the support from the community, we really want to build something together, and will you truly partner with us, because every partner has different needs and capabilities. Well, we are down to our last few minutes. Thank you so much for your questions. I want to give just a moment for each of the panelists. If you had one actionable strategy that educators could take to build a meaningful partnership, what would be that one actionable first strategy, that they might take? And maybe Jess, do you mind starting it for us?
I guess it just comes back to planning. Like, have a plan, like what you want to accomplish, and have a way that you're going to accomplish that. Like a clear steps on how you would explain to someone how you would accomplish that.
Thank you.
For me, I guess it's going back to that idea of being open. So I would say research, look around, look at your neighboring schools and community, see what's already going on, and being open to sort of bringing that into your own school.
I think building relationships, right? The older I get, the more I realize that the relationships I built over the years are more important than anything else. So I think those relationships create a strong foundation, and then kind of having clear expectations and goals.
I just want to say a huge thank you to our panelists, Jess and Principal Rauchin and Joanna. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your insights and your thoughtfulness. I want to thank everyone who attended, this work, expanding arts education beyond the classroom. It is not easy, but it is so incredibly meaningful and impactful. So grateful to be part of this community and partners with Arts and Education Roundtable and allowing us to be part of this conversation and this life-changing work. So thank you all so much.
And yeah, thank you. I mean, it was only an hour and a half together, but this was such a robust and meaningful conversation. So I'm just grateful for you all for bringing this to face this year into our community. For folks on the call, face to face continues this afternoon. So I hope you can join us today from 4 to 5:30 p.m. for our next session, which is called Nothing About Us Without Us: Youth Leading the Future of Media Literacy. This is going to be a panel with youth from the Advisory Council at Namely, and we're very excited to have their voices in the space as well. So hope you can join us. Then we have 2 more sessions tomorrow. You are already registered for them, so no action needed on your part, but I hope you can show up. And I will see you all at the next thing. Thank you again, and have a wonderful rest of your afternoon. Thanks all.
Thank you so much.